After being friends with Duncan for 10 years, I finally gathered the courage to confess my feelings to him. But instead, I saw him holding a beautiful girl in his arms, kissing her passionately. People around them were cheering, and some were laughing. "Since when did you suddenly get a girlfriend? What about Lily?" The man bit his cigarette lazily. "Keep your mouths shut. Don't tell Lily. She likes me so much. If she finds out, she'll definitely cry." I froze for a moment, my fingers curling awkwardly. So my secret crush had been known by everyone all along. It was just that Duncan had never wanted to respond. He simply didn't like me. After that day, I stopped messaging him and stopped looking for him. The next time I received a call from him was 2 months later. He asked casually, "Why haven't you come out to hang out lately?" I glanced at the cold, restrained man sitting beside me and answered with a smile. "My family has been pressuring me lately. I'm going on blind dates." The next second, the breathing on the other end of the phone suddenly became rapid. Chapter 1. I'm a little unlucky. The day I was planning to confess to Duncan, just as I reached the door of the private room, I happened to see a girl successfully confessing to him. Amid the cheering, Duncan grabbed the girl by the waist and kissed her deeply. The laughter and noise inside the room almost lifted the roof. Only I stood stiffly at the doorway, my head buzzing. The tight ache in my chest made it hard to breathe. Just one step more, and I could have said those words first. I stood there for a long time. After finally calming my emotions, I was about to walk in and congratulate them. Then suddenly I heard Duncan, with his new girlfriend in his arms, talking to the others. His tone was casual, yet carried a hidden warning about me getting a girlfriend. "Keep your mouths shut. Don't tell Lily." Among the many rich young men present, Duncan's family background was the most prominent. Hearing his words, they quickly agreed. "Of course, bro. Don't worry. We definitely won't say anything in front of Lily." One drunken man patted his chest. "Don't worry, bro. We get it. Lily likes you so much. If she finds out, she'll definitely cry." Amid the noisy laughter of loyalty and teasing, I stood outside the door, stunned. I never expected it. Duncan and the people around him had known all along that I liked him. Chapter 2. Duncan and I have known each other for more than 10 years. We were high school classmates. Back in high school, I kept pushing myself, trying to score better and better, just so that Duncan's name and mine could appear side by side on the honor roll. In college, I often used the excuse that the cafe near his campus gate had great coffee, just to meet him there and study together. After graduation, Duncan stayed in the city to start a business, so I stayed as well. For 10 years, I remained by Duncan's side under the name of friend. Thinking back to all those times I pretended to be carefree in front of him while secretly harboring my feelings, I suddenly felt deeply embarrassed. I was about to turn around and run away when I accidentally bumped into a waiter, knocking all the bottles off the tray he was carrying. In the loud crash, glass shattered, and the floor was left in a complete mess. In an instant, everyone in the private room looked toward the door. Duncan suddenly raised his head. The moment our eyes met, a brief look of surprise flashed across his face. Soon after, he curved his lips into a faint smile. Looking at me, he spoke gently. "Lily, since you heard it, I might as well say it clearly. I know you've always been good to me. I've tried to like you, but I'm sorry, I just can't." His tone sounded somewhat troubled, as if liking me was truly too difficult for him. Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. Standing there, my face burned with embarrassment and confusion. Am I really that bad? I kept asking myself, gathering the last bit of courage. I spoke unwillingly. "But you kissed me last night. That's enough. Lily, don't say any more." Duncan interrupted me impatiently. Seeing me bite my lip awkwardly, his expression softened again, and he sighed lightly. When he spoke again, his voice became even gentler. It sounded like a promise, or perhaps a consolation. "Lily, whether I have a girlfriend or not, you'll always be my best friend." I understood what he meant. The relationship between us would only ever be friendship. He would never like me. Okay, I understand. The sour ache in my eyes was about to spill over. I clenched the hem of my dress, trying to force out a calm smile, but tears still fell. My vision blurred more and more. I knew that if I stayed any longer, I would only embarrass myself further. Lowering my head, I quickly said, I have something to do. I'll go first. I straightened my back as best as I could and walked quickly out of the room. Only after I had gone far away did I finally lean against the wall. Trembling, tears poured down uncontrollably, dropping onto the carpet one by one. They spread silently, without a sound. Chapter 3. I got caught in the rain while getting out of the car. By the time I got home, my head felt heavy and foggy, as if I were coming down with a cold. I took a quick, careless shower and, without even drying the water still dripping from my hair, crawled straight into bed. I wanted to use sleep to escape the aching pain in my chest. But when I turned over, I saw the painting Duncan had given me on the bedside table. Even though I had carefully sealed it in a frame, time had inevitably yellowed the edges of the paper. In the corner was a line written in gray pencil, a date, 14/09/03. So Duncan and I had known each other for that long already. When 17-year-old Duncan transferred to the high school in our small county town, it caused quite a stir. The boy was tall and slender, with handsome features, while the other boys were still wearing knockoff Adidas down jackets. He wore a black cashmere coat that looked unmistakably expensive, carrying himself with quiet elegance. I heard he had come from the capital. His grandfather had fallen seriously ill, so he transferred schools to accompany him during his final days. But he had an extremely cold personality. He never chatted casually with me or with anyone else. Occasionally, if he had missed school the day before, he would poke the sleeve of my school uniform and say, "Could I borrow your notes from yesterday's class?" Our relationship stayed like that, neither close nor distant, until one evening, I went to the teacher's office to ask a question. By the time I returned, it was already dark, and the classroom lights were off. I instinctively thought no one was there anymore, but when I fumbled for the switch and turned on the lights, I realized Duncan was still sitting at his desk. The moment the lights came on, he quickly lowered his head, but I still saw his reddened eyes. "What are you doing?" His voice was hoarse. I froze for a moment before answering honestly. I'm packing my bag." He said nothing. I walked over and hurriedly gathered my things. When I was about to leave, I hesitated for a moment. Then I took the tissue from my pocket and quietly placed it on his desk. I didn't dare look at Duncan's expression. I ran away quickly. I didn't know why he was crying, but I wanted to comfort him. Chapter 4. The next day, Duncan spoke to me first for the first time ever. "Thank you." The boy pushed a sheet of paper toward me. "This is for you." I lowered my head instinctively. Then my eyes widened in shock. It was an original signed sketch by the hottest comic artist at the time. It wasn't framed or sealed in plastic, yet it was casually placed right on my desk. Because of that drawing, the quiet and reserved me became the center of attention for the first time. All the classmates rushed over to look at it. Amid the uproar, countless envious gazes focused on me. No matter how slow I was, I understood how valuable that drawing was. I shook my head and was just about to return it to Duncan, but he was quicker, pressing down on the other end of the paper. Still in his school uniform, the boy leaned on his arm and looked at me, his tone as casual as always. "I saw you bought his art book before. I happen to have one of his signed sketches." He frowned slightly. "What? You don't like it?" I shook my head. "It's too expensive. I can't accept it." Duncan chuckled softly when he heard that. "You're my desk mate. What's one drawing?" Chapter 5. After that, everything developed naturally. Duncan's attitude toward me changed, and I became his only friend in this small county town. Before the college entrance exams, he asked which university I planned to apply to, and then applied to a university in the same city. After we entered university, I had the key to the apartment he rented. After he started working and bought a house, we would spend weekends curled up on the sofa watching movies. When the ending credits rolled, we would argue playfully about what to eat for dinner. Whenever he introduced me to his friends, he would always say openly, "This is my friend, Lily." For 10 years, we remained together under the name of friendship. I thought I had hidden my little feelings very well. But at this moment, I suddenly realized something. Someone as perceptive as Duncan had probably sensed my feelings long ago, back in high school. The night he received that pack of tissues, he simply never exposed my clumsy act, and never gave me an answer. Chapter 6. After that night in the private room, Duncan and I stopped contacting each other. I removed him from the top of my pinned chats on WeChat. Our chat window was gradually pushed down by new messages popping up one after another, until finally it sank quietly out of sight. A few days later, the company held its annual gala. My performance had been good recently, so the manager personally brought me along to toast several senior executives. Autumn weather was unpredictable, and by the time the event ended, it had already begun to rain. I had been drinking, so I couldn't drive. All I could do was sit in the hotel lobby, constantly refreshing the ride-hailing app while watching my place in the queue. At that moment, a colleague walked past. When she passed me, she smiled and greeted me. Her tone was very certain. "You're waiting for Duncan to pick you up, right?" Hearing Duncan's name suddenly mentioned by someone else caught me off guard. I froze for a moment, then quickly came back to my senses. "No." I lifted my phone and explained seriously. "I'm waiting for a ride." "Oh, stop pretending in front of me." My colleague winked playfully. "It's the middle of the night. There's no way Duncan would feel at ease letting you take a ride home alone." I fell silent, not knowing how to respond, because she wasn't wrong. Chapter 7. Over the years, Duncan had indeed cared about me. My work was busy, and there were always social dinners and overtime. So Duncan had become my personal driver. In the deep night, he would always lean against his car, cigarette between his lips, waiting for me. When he saw me, he would sigh and say, "You really are my little tyrant," while gently fastening my seatbelt. On the passenger seat of his Maybach, there was a knitted blanket specially left for me. The stitches were loose and uneven. The first time I saw it, I laughed loudly and asked where he had bought such an ugly blanket. He only snorted and held out his beautiful, slender fingers, now covered with tiny needle marks. "I used the best yarn to knit it for you myself. And you still complain?" It really wasn't something I could complain about. A proud young heir like him had always been the one others tried to please. Yet he repeatedly made exceptions for me. Just as I was lost in these memories, my colleague suddenly spoke. "Hey, isn't that President-was car?" Hearing that, I suddenly looked up. Sure enough, that familiar Maybach with its distinctive license plate was quietly parked in the rain-filled night. I froze for a moment and instinctively stood up. The next second, I saw Duncan step out of the car under an umbrella, his arm around a young girl. The girl was beautiful and tall. When she tilted her head up to talk to Duncan, the smile on her lips was sweet. She was the very girlfriend I had seen that night. My colleague also noticed their intimacy and immediately fell silent. Cautiously glancing at my expression, I smiled and said calmly, "See? Duncan really isn't here to pick me up. It's just a coincidence. He probably came here to have dinner with his girlfriend." My colleague froze. When she spoke again, her voice rose several pitches in shock. "What? He has a girlfriend? I always thought he was pursuing you." I paused for a moment and then shook my head. "Duncan and I are just friends. He doesn't like me." I tried my best to keep my expression composed, but the dull ache in my chest was unavoidable. My colleague stared in disbelief. "How is that possible? The way he treats you." I always thought. Halfway through, she seemed to realize she had said too much and awkwardly stopped. I didn't know what to say either, so I simply lowered my head and sipped my coffee. After one sip, I realized it had already gone cold. Cold coffee is even more bitter than herbal medicine. Chapter 8. Early the next morning, my manager called me into her office. "I remember you're from Shenzhen, right? The company is planning to expand the Shenzhen branch recently. I want to send you there as acting director for a while. With your ability, if you stay there in the future, there will be great opportunities for promotion." The manager sounded excited. It was obvious that this opportunity was rare. Not only would it mean a promotion and a raise, it would also allow me to stay close to my parents. It was truly such a good opportunity that I could hardly find a reason to refuse. Yet Duncan's face kept appearing in my mind. If I left the city, my connection with Duncan would be completely cut off. Just thinking about it made my chest feel strangely empty, as if a large piece had been torn away. Even I couldn't help despising my own weakness and humility. The manager noticed my hesitation. She smiled and told me to go back and think about it. I nodded and returned to my desk. Throughout the entire day of work, I kept zoning out, I kept thinking about the past, while feeling lost about the future. Just as I was leaving work, I unexpectedly received a call from Duncan. "I'm downstairs at your company. Let's have dinner tonight." Through the receiver, Duncan's voice sounded the same as always, familiar and lightly amused, as if what happened in the private room last time had never occurred. He could calmly continue treating me like a friend, but I couldn't. I softly refused. "I want to go home and rest." Duncan seemed not to notice the resistance in my tone. He responded casually, "Then I'll drive you home." I took a deep breath, preparing to refuse again, but he interrupted me. "Stop wasting time. Come down." His tone was somewhat firm, as if he wouldn't give up unless I agreed. I sighed and could only answer, "Okay." After all, a free ride is a free ride. Before I even walked out of the revolving door, I already saw Duncan. He leaned against his Maybach, a cigarette between his lips, staring lazily toward the entrance. The streetlights scattered soft glimmers in his eyes, giving him an absent-minded kind of tenderness when he looked at people. Suddenly, I remembered. Many years ago, he had once leaned the same way against his bicycle, waiting for me after class. Chapter 9. In the blink of an eye, many years had passed. I was still lost in thought when Duncan's gaze swept toward me. When he saw me, the smile on his lips deepened. He reached out to open the car door for me, then handed me a cake from the back seat. "This milk crepe cake has been pretty popular lately. I figured you'd like it, so I brought you one." As he spoke, he added half teasingly, "Have you been that busy lately? You don't even have time to have dinner with me anymore?" The knitted blanket that used to sit on the passenger seat had quietly disappeared. Sitting in the now empty seat, I held the cake and softly replied, "Yeah, it's almost the end of the year. We're rushing deadlines. The boss even said every team has to take turns working overtime. Your boss really knows how to exploit employees." It was still the same question and answer. Casual conversation. But this time, the atmosphere inside the car felt strangely heavy. Duncan tried to lighten the mood. First he told a joke, then added, "That bag you liked, I already asked someone to buy it for you. It should arrive next week." I looked confused. "Bag? What bag?" Duncan glanced at me sideways. "Don't pretend. Last time you came with me to that banquet, you said the bag that little celebrity was holding looked nice." I thought back for a long time, then widened my eyes. "I was just saying it casually." Duncan laughed lazily. "If you think it looks good, then I'll buy it so you can look at it more. What's our relationship? Why be embarrassed?" Before he could finish, his phone rang. The name Ruby lit up on the car's display screen, glowing clearly in the darkness. It was impossible to ignore. I remembered the name of Duncan's girlfriend, Ruby. The smile on Duncan's lips suddenly froze. The ringtone kept ringing. After a moment of silence, I reminded him, "If you don't answer, your girlfriend will start worrying." After hearing that, Duncan finally raised his hand and answered. The girl's coquettish voice immediately filled the entire car. "Duncan, the fashion show in Paris has been postponed, so I'll have to stay a few more days. There's nothing good to eat here. I really miss the milk crepe cake we had last time." "I miss you." The girl spoke seriously about one thing after another, her voice sweet and pleasant. Duncan responded patiently, saying yes to everything, yet his eyes quietly glanced toward me. Chapter 10. I pretended not to notice, and I pretended not to know that the cake in my hands was probably just an extra he had casually brought along after carefully buying one for another girl. I turned to look out the window. Everywhere I looked were familiar places. Places filled with memories of Duncan and me. In that sports arena, he had once taught me how to roller skate. Back then he deliberately scared me, saying he would let go. Yet he always held my hand firmly, guiding me step by step as I practiced. On this street, we once walked its entire length on a snowy winter night, chatting the whole time. What remained in my memory was the sharp cold air mixed with the scent of the Marlboro mint cigarettes he smoked, cool and sweet. And there was that flower shop. He knew I loved baby's breath flowers, so he even bought an annual membership so the shop would deliver a bouquet to me every day, until the car stopped in front of my apartment building. The memories ended. In that moment, I suddenly realized clearly that those youthful days, full of smiles, cheers, and laughter, were gone forever. "I'm home, bye." Duncan answered with a quiet and leaned over out of habit to unfasten my seatbelt. Our breaths brushed against each other as he came close. The distance between us felt far too intimate, so I quickly moved away. No need. I can do it myself. As I unbuckled the seatbelt, I spoke seriously. Don't come pick me up anymore. If your girlfriend finds out, it wouldn't be good. Duncan's hand froze in midair. Then he frowned. His voice turned colder. Lily, there's no need for you to keep your distance from me. I already made it clear last time. Even if I have a girlfriend, you're still my best friend. We can keep getting along just like before. His tone was very serious, but I couldn't help frowning. Chapter 11. Before, when both of us were single, even if we were overly close, it didn't matter. But now, Duncan clearly knew that I liked him, and he already had a girlfriend, yet he still wanted to keep me by his side under the name of friendship, maintaining this ambiguous and blurred relationship. To me, it was disrespectful, and to his girlfriend, it was even more unfair. Chapter 12. The atmosphere inside the car became stiff. After a moment, I softly called his name. Duncan, you might not know this, but the reason I suddenly went to see you that day was actually to confess to you. The night before, you were drunk. When I helped you home, you kissed me. At that moment, I was truly happy. I thought I finally had a chance to become your girlfriend. Duncan remained silent. He listened quietly, without surprise, without explanation. Suddenly, I felt like laughing, and I understood. That night, he hadn't been so drunk that he lost his memory. He remembered that kiss. Yet afterward he never mentioned it. And the very next day he rushed to get a girlfriend, because he was afraid I would use that kiss as leverage and expect him to take responsibility. After realizing that, the last trace of reluctance in my heart disappeared. I said calmly, Duncan, from now on, I won't like you anymore. Since you have a girlfriend, treat her well. I wish you happiness. As I said those words, I curled my lips slightly, trying to remain composed and relieved. In the darkness, I saw Duncan nod very lightly. He said quietly, I opened the car door and turned to leave, but he suddenly called my name. I turned back and saw Duncan roll down the window, looking at me from afar. Under the streetlight, half of his face was hidden in shadow, the other half in light. His expression was impossible to read. Seeing me turn around, he simply gazed at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. Forget it, he said. Goodbye. Chapter 13. Packing my luggage, submitting my report, heading to the airport. The entire process flowed smoothly, and I didn't hesitate for even a moment. Back then, the reason I stayed in the capital city was Duncan. With wholehearted devotion, I believed love could overcome any obstacle, always thinking that one day he would come to like me. Now that I had let go of my feelings for him, there was nothing left in that city worth staying for. When I returned home, my parents were delighted to learn that I had been transferred back with a promotion. But soon after, they began subtly asking about my love life and urging me to think about marriage. Snowflakes fluttered down again. It was the first snow of the year. I pushed open the old window, and the wind mixed with snow blew directly toward me. The snowflakes landed on my face and melted quickly. I raised my hand and wiped my face. When I spoke again, my voice was calm. I said, if I meet someone suitable, I can go on a blind date. Chapter 14. Even though I agreed, not a single blind date actually happened. Having just arrived at the branch office, my work was extremely busy. As the director, my direct superior was the vice president. He was only a few years older than me, but he handled matters with remarkable efficiency and composure. When we first met, he personally came downstairs to greet me. He wore a well-tailored lead gray suit, his posture upright, with a perfectly measured gentle smile on his lips. I'm Sam, looking forward to working with you. We shook hands briefly before politely letting go. As Sam led me toward the office, he explained the current projects. His thoughts were clear, and his explanations were extremely organized. Under his guidance, I quickly entered working mode. Once work began, the time flew. Before I knew it, it was already the end of the year. On New Year's Day, Duncan suddenly sent me a message with holiday wishes. When I saw his message, there was not the slightest ripple in my heart. I only replied with a simple thank you, polite and distant, like replying to a stranger. A few days later, I received another call. It was from a male classmate from high school. This classmate had been one of Duncan's close friends. Back then, he was the one who told me that Duncan collected glass cups. He greeted me enthusiastically and then asked cautiously, "I happen to be on a business trip to the capital. Want to meet up?" I replied, "No, I'm not in the capital." He paused. "Huh? Where did you go? When are you coming back?" He was just a classmate I hadn't seen in years, yet he seemed unusually concerned about my current situation. I found it a bit strange but patiently explained, "I'm not going back to the capital. I've returned to my hometown to work. My parents are getting older, and I want to settle down." Just then, Sam knocked on my office door. "Lily, sorry, I think one of my cufflinks might have been left at your place last night." The previous evening, Sam and I had gone to meet a client. When he drove me home afterward, we happened to run into my mother. My mother warmly invited Sam upstairs to sit for a while, unable to refuse. He came up for tea. His cufflink must have fallen off then. I loosened my grip on the phone and said with a smile, "Okay, I'll look for it when I get home and bring it to you tomorrow morning." Before I finished speaking, the line on the other end suddenly became noisy. Then a familiar, gloomy voice appeared. "Lily," Duncan spoke through clenched teeth, raising his voice sharply. "Who is that man? How did his things end up at your house?" Chapter 15. At that moment, Sam was still standing at the door of my office. He probably still wanted to discuss something about work. I didn't want to continue explaining anything to Duncan on the other end of the phone, nor did I think it was necessary, so I hurriedly said, "He's my supervisor. I have something to do. We'll talk later," and hung up. What I said was true, but Duncan must have misunderstood something. Later I heard that, after I hung up that day, the welcome dinner that had been arranged for that high school classmate felt more like a funeral. Duncan's expression was frighteningly gloomy. Someone who didn't understand the situation joked, "What's wrong? Did you have a fight with the girl you like?" Duncan replied coldly, "No." The man laughed. "Oh, come on, if she were just a friend, would you be this jealous? You clearly care about her, you're just too afraid to admit it." When Duncan heard that, his expression suddenly changed. Amid the loud and cheerful DJ music, he sat there quietly for a moment. As if remembering something, he leaned back on the sofa and let out a bitter laugh, then slowly covered his eyes with his wrist. Chapter 16. On the night of the little new year, Duncan called me and said he was passing by and could pick me up after work. I froze for a moment. "You forgot, I'm not in the capital anymore." But he replied, "I know, come downstairs." An unbelievable thought suddenly rose in my mind. I stood up quickly and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window. Through the glass, I saw a familiar figure standing in the snow. Looking up and smiling at me, he was really downstairs. A wave of bitterness suddenly surged in my chest. I knew that with Duncan's status, it would be easy for him to track someone down. I just never expected that one day he would use those means on me. We were only friends. Why would he come chasing after me? I slowly gathered my things, picked up my bag, and went downstairs. Before I could even offer a polite greeting, he spoke eagerly the moment he saw me. His first words were, "You don't need to keep your distance from me anymore. Ruby and I have broken up." I calmly interrupted him. "You'd better not say it was because of me." Duncan fell silent for a moment. He tapped the cigarette against the trash can, then smiled again. "Of course not. I just felt she and I weren't suitable." I gave a quiet "oh," feeling relieved. Then he continued, "There's a project here recently. I'll be staying in this city for a while to supervise it. In a place like Shenzhen, you're the only person I'm familiar with. I'll have to trouble you to look after me for a while." As if noticing that I wanted to refuse, he lowered his eyes and spoke softly. "Even if we're not friends anymore, we're still old classmates. Just consider it helping me out for the sake of our school days." Chapter 17. I had never seen Duncan so humble in front of anyone. After a moment of silence, I still agreed, and so Duncan stayed in Shenzhen. From time to time he sent me messages, asking about the local customs and tourist attractions. After chatting in circles for quite a while, he cautiously asked, "Are you free this weekend? Could you be my tour guide?" It was the first time Duncan had lowered himself so much in front of me. I found it hard to refuse again. I checked my calendar and saw that I had no work scheduled for the weekend, so I replied that it was fine. After being away for several years, I realized while showing Duncan around that Shenzhen had become much more commercialized. Many of the old bridges, flowing canals, and ancient streets had been renovated. On the old street, a newly opened shopping mall was holding an event. The host shouted into a microphone with all his strength, introducing the promotion. Any couple who hugged for 5 minutes could receive a plush toy. Duncan stared at the plush toy beside the host, then suddenly laughed softly and nudged me with his elbow. "Hey, I remember you used to like stuffed toys back in high school." I nodded and smiled. "Yeah, you used to say I was childish. Well, how about I get you another plush toy today?" Duncan stretched out his arms toward me. Under the warm winter sunlight, his peach blossom eyes were filled with a gentle smile. It was so attractive that it was hard to look away. My hand in my pocket lifted unconsciously for a moment, but I quickly calmed myself. No need. Keeping my hands in my pockets, I shook my head. I don't really like plush toys anymore. Chapter 18. Later, we wandered aimlessly along the old street for a while. Then we sat down to eat in a restaurant that claimed to be a century-old establishment. While Duncan was ordering food, my phone buzzed a few times. It was a message from Sam. "Sorry to disturb your break. I just received notice that the headquarters will hold a meeting next week. You and I will need to attend together." I replied, "Okay, I'll change next week's regular meeting to online." Sam responded again, "All right. Also, make sure someone follows up on the marketing proposal. By the way, I checked the weather forecast. Beijing will get colder those days. Remember to bring some thick clothes." Perhaps because I had been typing continuously, Duncan stared at me for a long moment before finally speaking. "Which guy are you chatting with? The one who asked about the cufflink last time?" I was a little surprised that he guessed so accurately and that he still remembered that phone call. I nodded and said with a smile, "You should become a fortune teller. Your guess is spot on." He fell silent for a moment, then asked, "Is he pursuing you?" I shook my head. "No." "Oh." The corners of Duncan's lips lifted slightly. Then he quickly suppressed the smile, with a hint of complaint and grievance. He said, "In that case, when you're with me, why are you still distracted chatting with him?" I smiled faintly and continued typing as I answered calmly, "It can't be helped. He and I are friends too. I can't show favoritism and only chat with you while ignoring him." Duncan suddenly choked on his words. He lowered his head and fell silent. Chapter 19. I wasn't lying. Aside from our superior-subordinate relationship at work, Sam and I were indeed good friends. He was a very gentle and gentlemanly person, someone who knew how to care about the feelings of people around him. Being with him was relaxing no matter what we were doing. More importantly, we shared many common interests. We could easily start talking about a topic and continue the conversation naturally, laughing together without realizing how much time had passed. So that day at noon, when I was having lunch with him, as he handed me a bowl he had rinsed with hot water, he said naturally, "Lily, I like you very much. Do you want to give us a try?" Amid the rising steam, my mind suddenly went blank for a moment. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, the phone rang. On the other end was a hospital staff member. "Are you a friend of Mr. Duncan? He's been in a car accident." Everything happened too suddenly. I jumped to my feet, said a quick apology to Sam, and prepared to rush out. But Sam grabbed my hand. "Don't panic," he said gently. "I'll take you there." Chapter 20. Duncan's car had scraped against a truck that was driving the wrong way. He was injured, but fortunately it wasn't serious. When I rushed to the hospital in a panic, Duncan had already finished getting stitches. His right arm was wrapped in thick bandages, and his forehead was covered with gauze. When he saw me standing stiffly at the door, he grinned carelessly. "Hey, you don't know this. I almost thought I was going to die young." "Don't say such unlucky things." I frowned. Duncan tilted his head back and stared at me for a long moment. Then suddenly he reached out with his left arm and gently hugged me. His voice was low, tinged with self-mockery. For a moment, I thought I'd never see you again. My body stiffened for an instant. But in the end, I compromised and hugged him back. Chapter 21. Duncan had the temperament of a spoiled young master. After staying in the hospital for a few days, he started complaining about how uncomfortable it was and insisted on going home. The doctor also said it wasn't anything serious, he just needed to return for regular checkups. I helped him back to the apartment he had rented, applied medicine to his wounds again, and cooked some porridge for him. After finishing everything, I prepared to leave, but Duncan suddenly reached out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was strong. Caught off guard, I stumbled and fell onto the sofa. "Duncan!" I shouted angrily, but Duncan only chuckled softly. He leaned down and looked at me from above. His expression was mournful, sighing dramatically. "Lily, I'm already in this condition. Can't you stay and keep me company?" I calmly sat up and moved away from him. "I've been very busy with work lately. I can't come take care of you. I'll help you hire a caretaker," Duncan joked lazily. "Hey, I don't want a caretaker. I want you." Seeing my serious expression, the smile on his lips slowly faded. He pressed his lips together and said softly, "All right." Chapter 22. The day before the spring festival, Duncan finally had his stitches removed. He said the car accident had been terribly unlucky and asked me to accompany him to a temple to pray for some good fortune. Shenzhen had many temples, some prayed for health, others for career success, but the one he chose was famous for granting wishes about romance. I remembered that he used to never believe in such things. I thought he simply didn't understand. The car was already parked at the temple entrance. Since we were there, I had nothing more to say and could only go in with him. It had just snowed, and the stone steps were a little slippery. Holding the hem of my skirt, I walked carefully upward. The staircase was long. Suddenly I remembered the summer after we graduated from high school. Before the exam results came out, I had already returned to Shenzhen with my parents. Back then, I had also come here to burn incense. The wish I made at that time was that Duncan and I would be admitted to the same university, and that my secret love for him would come true. My wish back then had been so sincere. Tears suddenly fell from my eyes, not because I was sad that Duncan and I never ended up together, but because I felt sorry for the girl I used to be, who had spent 10 years quietly loving someone. In front of the Bodhisattva hall, there was only one prayer cushion. Duncan knelt first. When he stood up, he asked me, "Do you know what wish I just made?" When I shook my head blankly, his voice suddenly became a little nervous. "I wished that, Lily, we could start again." I suddenly realized what he was about to say, so I smiled and interrupted him. Gently, I said, "Duncan, don't say it. If you say a wish out loud, it won't come true." The light in Duncan's eyes faded little by little. I no longer looked at him. I brushed past him, knelt on the prayer cushion, and lowered my eyes to make my wish. My wish was, I hoped that in the future I could meet someone who truly loved me, someone who would give all his favoritism to me alone, and that I would become braver too, no longer enduring a long secret love by myself, but able to face the bitterness and regret of love honestly, that I could stand openly before the person I liked and say, without hesitation, "I like you," as I bowed my head to the ground. The distant sound of the temple bell suddenly rang out, deep and resonant. At that moment, something in my heart seemed to echo as well, then quietly faded away. The secret love that began in my youth, the story between Duncan and me, all of it had come to an end. Ahead lay a vast sky and open seas. For me, it would be a completely new life.